Head over to miniaturemarket.com. They have thousands of board games at discounted prices like Jabba's Palace. Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here. Many years ago, Love Letter came out and it took the gaming world by storm. It created a whole new genre called micro games, where the original game only had 16 cards in it, but it was such a good game for such a little amount of cards. Well, they've built upon that with many other different versions with Lovecraft Letter and Batman and many other different IPs. Well, now they're coming out with a new one called Jabba's Palace, which is a Star Wars theme. Let me show you how this one's different, but also similar to the original. Let me show you. Jabba's Palace is a love letter game that has Star Wars theme, comes with all new cards, comes with its nice little bag to hold the pouch, all the cards in there, and it has some victory tokens that you'll be using to try to see who will win the game. The object of the game is to get a certain amount of these victory tokens depending on the number of players, and this matches exactly the new version of Love Letter because you can play up to 6 players. The game is very simple. Everyone's going to start with a card face down. One card will be randomly removed, so there's never perfect information. On your turn, you draw a card, which means now you have 2. You'll look at these, you'll simply play one, and then do what it says. For example, let's say I play this one, it says choose another player and look at their hand. So you would get to look at what card another player is holding, then it would be the next player's turn. Now, why is that even important? Well, my next card I play when it comes back around to me might be the guard. I'll draw a card, let's say I play this one, choose another player and guess the number. If they have that number in their hand, they're out. Well, if you just looked at somebody's hand and you know what number they have, if they don't get rid of that card next turn, well, it's their own fault if it comes back around to you and you play the guard. Because if you do, you knock them out. Because that's one way to get one of these victory tokens is if you knock everybody else out, or meaning you're the last one standing, everyone else is knocked out, the round will end and you'll gain a victory point. The other way to win is, let's say the round keeps going around and around, the last card of the draw deck is pulled, whoever is still standing, whoever has the highest number card in their hand by default is going to win the victory token. However, there's another card that will give you a victory token. Han Solo is the 0. It's a worse card, but at the end of the round, if you have that in your hand, you gain a victory point. Now this one is hard to do because other cards, like this one, the Mercenary, you can choose another player and secretly compare hands and whoever has the lowest numbers out. So if you have this in your hand, you're trying to hold it to the end to get this victory point, there's a good chance you might end up getting knocked out because pretty much anyone that plays that card and picks you is going to knock you out because this is lower than every other card. Now the C-3PO is a 1. It's kind of like a guard because you can choose another player and guess that number. If they have that number in their hand, they're out, but if they don't, you get knocked out. So you only want to play this if you're really sure of what they have. Maybe you've seen it earlier or something like that. The 2 R2-D2, you can look at the face down set aside card. I told you at the beginning of the game, one of these is set aside so that nobody has perfect information, but you could get that perfect information if you have R2-D2, or you could choose another player and look at their hand. So a little bit more options there than normal with that number 2 card. Now, Chewbacca. Let's talk about the different types of cards. It says choose another player, and if they have a palace with a 4 or less, they are out. There's 2 types of cards in this game. There are rebels, that has this rebel like Chewbacca, and there's palace cards. Now, there's actually a lot more palace cards than rebel cards, and this is different in this version of Love Letter. And here, so this player is this, and they have this. So, if they have this in their hand, and Chewbacca played this and chose them, they have a 4 or less, they have the palace, they'd be knocked out. However, if someone played this card the round before, this is, until your next turn, you cannot be chosen for their effects. This is essentially the same as the Handmaiden in the original Love Letter. But unlike the original Love Letter, that's not the only 4 in the game. Lando allows you to choose another player and look at their hand, and you can trade hands with them. 5 layer, you get to draw 2 cards from the draw deck, keep 1, and put the other 2 in the bottom in any order. Those are both new abilities. Boba Fett allows you to choose another player, take the card from their hand, and place it in your play area. Now you don't get to activate that card, but this will be important for missions and different types of cards that will come up in just a moment I'll show you about. Now this one here, all players with the lowest number in hand except 0 out. So you start basically at 1, and if anyone has it, they're out. If no one says anything, you go to 2. Nobody has it, you go to 3. So that helps you get the lowest without people showing what you have. So the lowest number essentially will be out if you play that one. And the last 2 cards is Luke, choose another player. If they have a palace, they're out. He just knocks out any bad guys. And Jabba, choose another player. If they have a rebel, they're out. So these 2 just knock out anybody that's in the other sort of side of things. Now each game you have 1 single agenda. And this is sort of a rule, so if that draw deck runs out, I told you by default, the one who has the highest number in hand wins. That's like the original love letter. So you play with this one to start the game. Now you'll play with this same agenda for all of the rounds because games go through multiple rounds. However, you might instead play with this one. Most rebels in play, and that's why that's important to, the Boba Fett card grabs someone's card and puts it in front of you, because you might be trying to have the most rebels in play to win the round. You might want to play with this one, which is the highest number palace and rebel card in hand, both win the round. So more than one player can win in that case. And maybe Jabba's court, highest sum, meaning all the numbers added together of the palaces in play win. So different ways that you can win when the deck runs out gives the game a little bit more longevity. Those are pretty much all the differences in this version of Love Letter. Quite a bit of them without changing the mechanisms too much. Well, let me first say that when Love Letter first came out, I loved that game, and I still really enjoy it. It's one of my go-to sort of starting out games, and people are new to the hobby and the new modern games. I will bring out Love Letter because it's fun, it's quick, it's easy. Players have cards, people know how to play card games. It's got a little bit of deduction, but it's not too heavy. It plays pretty quickly, it's portable, and you're basically just drawing a card, picking one of the two in your hand, and doing something. The main mechanisms of this game are so simple, but yet they've always been really fun. I like the deductive aspect, and so I've always really liked love letters. Now I have most all of them that have come out, and over the, it's been out for a while. I've played it a ton. The original Love Letter I've played more than 100 times, So I'm at the point now where I'm almost on Love Letter burnout, and that's how I felt coming into this. So with that lens, let's take a look at this one, because you may have not have even played any Love Letters before, or maybe you're a Love Letter expert or aficionado, if you will, like myself. I like with this one that they didn't just paste on a new theme to the original Love Letter. That's kind of what they did. By the way, this is now published by Z-Man Games, and the original Love Letter, when it came out, was by AEG. Batman, that version came out, which is out of print, you can't get anymore. That one was just like a pure pasted on. All the cards are the same, just with the new art, new Batman tokens. There was one little change rule: if you knocked someone else, you got a token, and you just played the 7 tokens regardless of the player count. But it was like very pasted on. No change, just new art, let's do it, right? But then there were other versions of Love Letter that came out, like Lovecraft Letter, which is the heaviest one and brought in a lot of new mechanisms. And although that was probably the most interesting version of Love Letter, it wasn't one that did extremely well. But for me, it was like it kind of went far enough outside of Love Letter that it probably shouldn't even been called Love Letter anymore, because it did a lot of different things. And that one kind of like took it in a completely different direction. I like that this one wasn't pasted on, but at the same time, it expanded Love Letter, but it didn't add a lot of the extra complexity that like Lovecraft Letter did. So it's kind of like in that middle range. They did some cool new things, but they also kept it very streamlined and very much in the heart of the original Love Letter. I like that they split the cards into both Rebel and Palace types. It makes sense thematically, it makes sense with the artwork, it makes sense now, and that they tie those different sides to different mechanisms, different agendas, and things like that. Very simple, again, simple change, but a big change to how the game's played. But mechanically, it's just as easy to teach as the original. I like how the different cards interacted differently depending on the type. Luke knocks out the Palace cards, Jabba knocks out the Rebel cards, and things like that. If one of the cards was like, if this player has a Palace and it's a 4 or less, they're gone. So I like how those sort of played off each other, just gave you a little bit different new things to think about. And again, it's not a lot more complex. If someone had never played Love Letter before, and you brought this to them and they like Star Wars, they would be able to catch on to this very quick. And that's a thing, because I have a feeling, and I'm pretty sure that this is going to be in a lot of mass market stores. Someone that doesn't play a lot of hobby games walks by and sees this on the shelf, and they like Star Wars and they pick it up, they're going to get a good game. They're not going to get a trash, money grab, silly card game that's terrible. They're going to get a good game, but yet it's still like in that, Star Wars universe for them. I like that they picked out a lot of new types of abilities. Like even that one where like C-3PO, the guard. It basically is the guard, but it's like a guard on steroids, where it's like, if you're wrong, you're out, right? And so I like that they twisted a lot of the different things in this, made it just a little different for us people that have played all the versions of Love Letters. I like the different agendas at the end. Great. No longer does just the person with the highest card wins. Now you have different goals. Maybe you want to have the most Rebels or the most Palace cards or the highest sum of cards. Different goals that you play with each game. Again, got to make the longevity of the game a little bit better. So overall, I like this. Let me get to the negatives of this. First of all, when Love Letter first came out, it was 16 cards. It was 2 to 4 players, and it was streamlined and it was perfect. Then they came out with the newer version from Z-Man, and it was 2 to 6 players, and they added more cards. They went from 16 cards to 21 cards in that game, and you played from 2 to 6 players. I always found the 2 to 6, the 5 or 6 player game of Love Letter, because they had to add more cards in, it overstayed its welcome. It's best at a 2 to 4 player game, and in fact, a 3 to 4 player game, although I do enjoy the 2 player game. Now, with that being said, and also with this, the 2 player game, you put there's a sort of a different way that you set things up. You get to see more information at the beginning. But in the original, or in the new version with the 21 cards, playing 5 or 6 players was a little bit too long. It just overstayed its welcome, you know? But in the new version, they say, hey, if you're playing 2 to 4 players and you want to play the original game, take these specific cards out and you're back to the original game. I wish they would have done that in this. To say, hey, look, if you're playing 2 to 4 players, take out this card, this card, this card, and now you're at 16 cards and go. Now, granted, the cards have changed so much, maybe there was no easy way to do that to keep all the cards balanced and such, but I really wish they would have done that variant to bring it back to the same card count and play time as the original, because it can go a little longer than the original. Not a huge deal, just a little quibble there. Because you do still need the same amount of tokens or victory tokens as you do in the new version as well. Sometimes I just play with less if you want a smaller. But I wish they would have said, hey, 2 to 4 players, play with just these cards. Make it a little faster, just like the new version does. Last thing is Jabba's Palace. I gotta say, I've seen all the Star Wars movies, and still my favorite is Return of the Jedi, and that's what this basically is about. So I love this. I couldn't think of a better one for me. However, with all the newer movies that have come out lately, I feel like they possibly missed an opportunity for going for one of the newer Star Wars movies, which would have, A, still been cool for people like me who's a little older and have seen all the Star Wars movies, but it would have been a little bit tied more to the younger generation, bringing younger kids into these hobby games because they know those movies better. I'm not sure why they didn't go with one of the newer Star Wars or even a Mandalorian or even the new Boba Fett story that's out now. I wish they would have gone with a little bit of the newer ones. Maybe those licenses were more expensive. Who knows? I don't know. I'm not complaining from a personal standpoint because I would actually prefer Return of the Jedi. It's my favorite. Although I would have loved to have seen some Ewoks and some, the guys that rode on the crazy flying through the woods things. Overall, if you play Love Letter and you have Love Letter, do you need this? If you're a huge Star Wars fan and you like Love Letter, it's kind of no-brainer. Just get it. It changes it up enough. It's not just a reskin, and you're gonna like it. It's a very inexpensive game anyway. If you've never played Love Letter, which one should you go with? I'd say if you like Star Wars or more, if you like or love Star Wars, get this version. Because again, it's not too hard. You'll like it right off the bat. If you're like, you don't really care too much about Star Wars, then go with the original version because it's gonna be just fine for you. Other than that, this has been the Game Boy Geek, breaking down barriers, growing relationships through board games, and helping you find the next one you'll love. Game Toppers not only transforms your existing table to a high-quality gaming solution, they now offer full leg kits and dining cover solutions for the full table application. Paired with their amazing, thematic, premium stitch edge mats from noted board game artists like Vincent Dutray, collapsible cup holders, and really cool accessories, it's a complete system that upgrades every game you play. Go to GameToppersLLC.com or click the link below.